talk about it. Tell me all about it. I'm here. I want to know what's on your mind. Ooh, the world needs to hear from you, and I'm so glad to have a conversation to reach the nation. And it's all about you. We'll help each other to discover innovative ways to positively change the world. Let's talk about. Let's talk about. Yeah. Let's talk about conversations with Nicole.
Greetings. Happy Monday. Welcome to Conversations with Nicole. I am Nicole Everett, your host, and Conversations with Nicole is a talk show based in Tallahassee, Florida, although I am in Miami right now, focused on connecting the community through conversations. And today is what I call Mindset Monday, which is an opportunity for you, me, and my guests to chat about whatever it is we want to chat about. Today, we are talking about ADHD, a blessing, not a curse, with my special guest, Dr. Michelle Gamble, who is a MD here in the Tallahassee area, or should I say in the Tallahassee area. And so I am excited and delighted to have her on with me. We actually, Dr. Michelle Gamble was on season 4 of Conversations with Nicole, which was a long, long time ago because we've done 12 seasons throughout our history, our 8-year history. And so she is back, and this is going to be a great conversation. But before I bring her on, I want to hear from you. Where are you tuning in from? We are live on Facebook, on YouTube, and on the Nicole Everett LinkedIn account. And so we want to hear from you. This is an interactive live and an opportunity for us to communicate with one another. Your questions, your comments are welcome. And so, we want to talk about this. We've actually had, so I'll tell you a little bit about how we even got here today. As Dr. Michelle Gamble saw our live with Dr. Cassandra, the child psychiatrist out of Chattanooga. And so she said, I'd like to talk about ADHD from a different perspective. So I said, let's do it. So here we are today. So I see you, Tracy Golay in Tallahassee. Thank you for being here. We appreciate your support. So yes, please tag a friend and let them know that they need to be on here. I see. I forgot. We are also live on Sankofa Healing and Enrichment YouTube, and It Takes a Village Ministry. So thank you for being here, Tracy, who is on that platform. Miss Jeanette Tullis, who just stopped by here in Miami Gardens. It was so nice to meet you in person, and thank you for your continued support of the broadcast. Really do appreciate you so much. And she just got back from Africa, so she was telling us all about her trip. So thank you for, again, stopping by and your continued support. So I know there'll be others joining us, but I'm going to go ahead and read Dr. Gamble's bio. Dr. Michelle Gamble is an author, educator, mentor, and speaker who specializes in assisting persons with chronic illness to transform their health. She is the mother of 5 adult children and travels globally and around the country, speaking and consulting with individuals and groups. Dr. Gamble has been a professional educator for over 25 years and a natural healthcare provider for over 20 years. More importantly, she has assisted many people in transforming their health and becoming empowered from previous dependencies upon drugs, surgeries, and other medical disease management interventions. Her revolutionary message is, all people have a divine healer within who can break free from physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual pain and suffering to lead happy, healthy, and purpose-driven lives. I love that. Dr. Michelle graduated summa cum laude from the City College of New York with a Bachelor's of Art in Mathematics and English with an emphasis on secondary school education. She earned a master's and doctorate in naturology and is a board certified alternative healthcare provider. She has advanced training and certification in functional endocrinology, blood and brain chemistry, colon hydrotherapy, childbirth education, and doula support. She is a certified provider with the Heart Math Institute, Amen Clinic, and the Walsh Institute. Y'all help me welcome Dr. Michelle Gamble. Yay! Welcome, welcome.
Everyone. It is so wonderful to be here with you guys this morning. Well, this evening. I guess it's morning somewhere in the world.
It is. It is. It is. Well, welcome, welcome. So as I often ask my folks on the live, I ask my guests, who are you? Not what do you do, but who are you? So if you would, in your own words, share a little bit of that, Dr. Michelle.
I am a servant not only for, of course, God Almighty, but also a servant for our people and a protector for our children. Those are the things that are most important to me. And that is who I am. That's the core of everything that I do.
Wonderful, 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 wonderful. Thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing that. We have Janita on. She says, good evening. And she said, OMG, wow, that is an amazing bio. Phew, yes, it is. So she has been busy working, working,
Well,
working.
God has just blessed me with so many different things. So it's all
Indeed,
to his glory.
indeed, indeed. So tell us a little bit about Sankofa Healing and Enrichment.
Okay. Well, Sankofa Healing and Enrichment actually evolved from first we began as Sankofa Learning Center when we were in Jacksonville, Florida. And that was a nonprofit organization that was focused on educating the community about health and wellness. Then in 2004, when we left Jacksonville, we decided to split that core organization into two entities, a for-profit organization and a non-for-profit organization. Subsequently, we evolved into Sankofa Healing and Enrichment. And then on a not-for-profit scene, we evolved into It Takes a Village Ministry.
Nice.
And we've been journeying ever since.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that. We got Duval in the house, Mr.
All
John
right,
White.
County.
All right. Appreciate you being here, John, Brother John. Appreciate you. And Miss Felicia Dilbert is on. She said excited to hear this convo. So thank you for joining us, Felicia. And we got Vonetta Blakely, who is a clinician in Carolina. Thank you for being here. Yes, yes. Vaughn has been on talking about autism. So
Mm,
she's done a couple of shows on autism. So thank you for tuning in tonight, Vaughn. Appreciate you. All right. So we need to just dive right on in. I think with first of all, I think we should start with like a definition of ADHD. And then move on into the thought behind it being a blessing and not a curse.
mhm. And
Hmm.
I think that's the perfect place to start with regards to exactly what is ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
Yes.
There are so many different pieces of the puzzle. And one of the things that I would like for us to consider is challenging that particular definition. Because I remember over 20 years ago when we did an international health summit when we were located in Waycross, Georgia, and we had gotten a speaker, Stephen Flog, to come in from California. And one of the first things he did was to challenge the people that were there at the summit with the question exactly what is the definition of hyperactivity? How do you decide what is attention deficit? Who
Mm,
creates that line of delineation? And how has it evolved over the years? And how do we perceive it? Because there's no test that can test and tell you, okay, at this point, you are attention deficit, or at this point, you are quote unquote hyperactive. When we look at something like blood glucose, we can say, you know what, at this point, you're transitioning from, healthy blood glucose into pre-diabetic. Then at another point, we can say, this is where you're transitioning into diabetes. We can do the same thing with blood pressure. We can do the same thing with immune. Everything else we can have a qualitative delineation as to what's what. Where are you transversing from normality into quote unquote a disease state? And that is subjective. The first place that I started to realize this was in the classroom. You know, as you read in my bio, I was a classroom teacher for over 25 years. And I started out in New York City teaching and other locations, you know, about this whole idea of attention deficit and hyperactivity. I was talking about it from the perspective of, when I did my training as an educator for being able to teach to our gifted students, what I learned was that a lot of the characteristics that they were giving to quote unquote gifted students are similar to the characteristics that we label our children as ADD or ADHD.
Mm.
And isn't it interesting that a lot of times the children that are in the gifted programs are children that are not from our communities, let's just put it
Mm.
that way, and that the
Okay.
children that we will label as special ed, that we are going to label with ADD, ADHD, and all that kind of alphabet soup, they are the children that look like you and I. And so that is where I started to question this whole notion of ADD, ADHD, and things of that nature. And then, like I said,
Mm-hmm.
I met up with Stephen Plog. And then from looking at Stephen Plog's research, he went into the way in which that terminology is weaponized to be able to keep certain children from not being able to show their full potential. So when we start to talk about ADD and ADHD, I love the fact that we're here on Mindset Monday. And what
Mm.
I would like us to consider is, how do we perceive children that we label as ADD or ADHD? Do we perceive them as the Einsteins? Do we perceive them as countless individuals that we can refer to who self identify as quote unquote ADD or ADHD? Or has this label stigmatized our children to the point where it's something like, oh my God, there's something wrong with you? So that is one area when we talk about looking at it as a blessing, not a curse, because the children who are truly ADD or ADHD, they are the children that I have seen in my experience to be extremely intelligent. These are the children who would just think about so many different things. Their minds are in so many different areas, and they can see things that the rest of us don't see. One particular child comes to mind that I taught. His name was Michael. And
Mm-hmm.
Michael was a child, he could not sit still for his life. You hear me? But it was interesting because Michael was also a child that was coming from a family that was going through a lot of challenges. Let's just put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Subsequently, Michael came to school maybe 2 times out of the week. And when he would come to school, he would come to my classroom. And I figured out Michael very early on in the scene that he was just brilliant. And I said to him, I said, Michael, I'm going to make a deal with you. I said, if you allow me to teach my class, which is, you know, I would have my lesson at the beginning for about 10, 15 minutes. If you allow me to teach my lesson without interrupting, just sit down there, right? And then at the end of the lesson, I'm going to give you problem number 20. You know, so usually after you teach a class, you know, you would start the class out with, you know, some easy problems, and you go to some intermediate problems, and you go to the hardest problem. So I said,
Mm-hmm.
Michael, after I teach a class for about 15 minutes, I'm going to give you the hardest problem. And if you can figure out that problem, you can leave the classroom and go do whatever you want to do. And we had made arrangements with the nurse that, you know, Michael would leave the classroom, go on tour, he'd go peeking into other people's classroom, going, then he'd go over to the nurse and have a conversation with the nurse. And then about 5 minutes before the end of the period, he would come back to the class. And then at that point in time, he would help me to help the other students, you know, by going up to the board and doing the problem. So that was the arrangement that I had with Michael. And
Okay.
would you that at the end of the school year, Michael never ever did homework. That was the other thing. Never, ever, ever did homework. But like I said, we had this deal between the two of us. And at the end
Right.
of the school year, Michael had one of the highest scores in my classroom.
Wow.
That's the way our children are. So
S-
that is one aspect of looking at ADD as a blessing and not a curse, to really recognize that our children are very talented. And the children that are truly ADD or ADHD, rather, are the children that are brilliant. Now, the flip side of that
So let me
is,
pause. Let me
yeah,
hold that thought just for a moment because we got a few more folks that have joined us that I want to acknowledge. We have Dr. Terry Parks, who is a psychologist in the Atlanta area. He said, "Hey, what we talking about?" Uh, thank you for being here, Dr. Parks. Please, your comments and questions are welcome. Also, Marcus Boston, who's an author in the Tampa area, as well as, and thank you for being here, Marcus, as well as clinician, licensed clinical social worker, Mr. Nick Rains, who is in the Tallahassee area. Thank you for being here, Nick. So we're talking about ADHD, a blessing, not a curse. And so, yes, go ahead with the flip side you were about to tell us about.
okay. So now the flip side of that, in order to introduce that, I would like to share with our wonderful audience
Okay,
our chart there.
got it.
And I would like to pose the question. If we look at this chart, I would like for people to tell us in the chat, what do you observe? What is it that you see? What are some observations that you make? Come on, guys. This is interactive. This is a conversation with the community. This is not a monologue here. No one can see can anyone see the chart? Is everyone able to see the chart?
I think so. Let me just give a shout out to Dr. Derek Standifer, who is an educator in the Atlanta area. Thank you for being here. All right, so the chart has males and females.
Mhm.
I got my glasses on, but ooh, it's a little small.
Yeah.
Uh, let's see. Okay, Krista said yes. Okay, the data is 13 years old. That was what she noticed, Janita.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Okay.
that's a very good point to make, Janita, that the data is 13 years old. And the reason why I'm saying that that's a very good point is because it's gotten worse. Let's put it
Mm.
that way since then.
Higher
A lot worse.
frequency males than females, Vaughn said.
Higher
Vanetta
frequency
said.
of males than in females. Absolutely true. How is it that we observe our males to be quote unquote hyperactive more so than we observe our females to be hyperactive? And one
Mm,
of the things I would like to ask you to think about is, what do you what do you consider as the temperament rather of males versus females? Are we likely to have males that are going to sit down in their seats and be the goody two shoes, or are our males usually tending to be more active, more wanting to challenge things, wanting to ask questions and things of that nature? And is that normal? Is that to be expected? Is that to be encouraged even?
mhm.
What are your
Good
thoughts,
question.
ladies and
Good question. My cousin Rennie just joined us. She's here in South Florida. She is also an educator. Thank you for being here, Rennie. So, yeah, no, I will say no because uh, I sit with a first grade class every week at my elementary, and they are active, very, very active.
exactly. So
Mm,
it is very much a situation where boy children, and I have two boys and I have two and three girls, boy
mhm,
children tend to be more interactive, more, exuberant, let's put it that way. That's just how God has hardwired them. Girl children, girl students tend to be more so, the ones that are very disciplined or very structured. I mean, even if you look at handwriting, I don't know if you were able to look at that, Nicole, when you were in the classroom.
mhm.
The most beautiful handwriting will come from my girl students, my female students. Guy students, oh my gosh, the handwriting, like, Lord have mercy, help me. you know, The same thing when you look at their notebooks. I would look at the notebooks for my girl students, and they would be wonderfully organized and color coded and cute little marker little things and things of that nature. Guys, oh Lord have mercy. You're lucky if they can even find the papers. It's like when they open up their binder, it's like Mount Vesuvius opening up. You
All
know,
right. So
very
Janita
different.
also pointed out it doesn't document the race or ethnicities.
No, no, no. And that is also something to consider, that the rates of students that are identified as ADD, ADHD, all of these alphabet soup, is higher percentage wise when it comes to children of color, African Americans, Latino Americans, that type of thing. Not your Asian Americans, but African Americans, Latino Americans. So these are things that I want you to think about. The other thing that I would like us to really look at is when it started to really surge up, when those numbers really, really start to go zoop up like that. Where do you see that significant increase occurring? Anyone
Mm,
see it? Or we're gonna have to like really point it out for you guys. So you're going to see a really significant uptick, like around the years of like 2008, 2009 is when you really see that slope increase a lot, meaning that the numbers really start increasing a lot, right?
mm,
And then the other thing to realize is that it has been increasing over the years since about the 1980s, okay? Now, the reason why I'm bringing all of these things up is because a lot of times they will say to you, well, this is hardwired into nature. It's a DNA thing.
mm,
It's passed down from one generation to the next. And if your mama is ADD or ADHD, then your baby's gonna be that, or vice versa.
mm-hmm.
Ladies and gents, biology does not change that quickly. Okay? Genetics do not change in the matter of a generation. That's just not science.
Okay.
So, the reason why I'm emphasizing this is because for those children that are not God designed as ADD, ADHD, quote unquote, meaning that they have a different way of learning, they have a different way of expressing themselves, they have a different way of perceiving the world and interacting with the world. Their world is more of alacrity, like boop, 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 boop. They can think about 10 things at one time, and they're like the geniuses. They're the ones that are going to be the innovators, the ones who are the phenomenal business people. We're not talking about that group.
Right.
Those groups, they're in a special category. I'm talking about the majority of students that you see that pool is getting larger and larger and larger every year. The same thing with autism. You know,
Mm-hmm.
back, 30 years ago, autism was like 1 in 1,000. Now the rates are about 1 in 40, and in some areas, even 1 in 30.
Mm-hmm.
We need to ask ourselves the question, why?
Right.
Okay. Why is this happening? And this is why I'm saying that ADD, ADHD, all of these little alphabet soup that people want to tell you about is actually a blessing. And the reason I'm saying it's a blessing is because they are signals. They are the smoke detector going off in our society.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm challenging us to consider that instead of smashing that smoke detector,
Mm-hmm.
aka medicating our children, we need to ask ourselves the question, where is the fire?
Mm,
Where is the fire that is setting off the smoke detector?
mm,
Otherwise known as, why does my child have this symptomology? What is creating that symptomology of Johnny not being able to focus or Mary not being able to sit down? What is triggering that? What are your questions? What are your thoughts, guys? Where do you
So,
think this is coming from?
Brittany just joined us. Thank you for being here, Brittany. And Janita said, I don't have an issue with the increase per se, because I think folks are more informed in seeking help.
Okay.
But what you are suggesting is that there is something more to this because of the increase in these diagnoses, correct?
Yes. So it's the
Okay.
same thing like autism, you know, when we look at autism and the significant increase in autism, and people will have that same argument of, oh, well, it's just because we're identifying it more. Really? If
Mm,
that were true, then show me the hundreds of thousands of autistic adults that are in their 70s that are banging their heads and can't speak and can't have eye contact and things of that nature. You won't see it. The same thing with quote unquote ADD, ADHD. Where are the significant populations in their 70s and 80s of people who can't function? Our children are literally at the point where they cannot function. And that is something that is different. We've never had this number of children that are finding it difficult to even function. As I said, we're not talking about the small percentage of students that are just really bright. These are your ADD kids, and they have learned how to maneuver in their world. And like I said, these are the kids that are like your high business people, your people who are ingenious. They come up with ingenious things. Okay,
mm,
we're talking
mhm,
about people who are finding it difficult to even focus for a couple of minutes.
mm.
And so
Okay.
what we start to look at is analyzing and saying, where is this coming from? And then to ask ourselves exactly what is this a record of? And so, what I'm suggesting to you is that we start to break down these symptoms
Okay.
and we start to say, where is it coming from? What's triggering these things? And a lot of different things are leading to the symptomology of ADD, ADHD, and all this alphabet soup that we're talking about. Do you know that something as simple as blood sugar dysregulation can cause that erratic behavior, can cause that inability to focus, can cause all types of things that are similar to what we define, quote unquote, as symptoms of ADD, ADHD.
Okay.
Do you know? Do you know that things like toxicity, meaning the toxins that we are exposed to on an everyday basis at this point in time because our world is so toxic, can wreak havoc in the brain and create a situation where your brain is constantly on fire. And this can be seen in scans that are like what's called a SPECT scan. So for those of you who are in the Atlanta area, some of you may be familiar with the Amen Clinic, where they're able to do actual scans of the brain to determine why people are having different forms of mental illness. Where is it in the brain that is reflecting an imbalance? And the
Hmm.
brain scans can show toxicity that can create that aberration. Nutritional deficiencies, especially with regards to omega fatty acids, will cause dysregulation of the brain, will cause that inability to focus, to calm yourself down, and things of that nature, that hyperactivity where you can't calm down, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So there's countless different things that can lead to this. And that's why the symptomology is a blessing because it's a red flag that says, Mama, I need help. I need for
Mm,
you to look and find out why this is happening to me. Don't simply smash the smoke detector by drugging me. And I've
mm,
dealt with a lot of students that have come to me that are on these medications. And as they get older, they get to the point where they're like, you know what? I don't want to take these meds because I know that it's controlling my mind and I want to have my mind back. So these are some of the things for us to really start considering.
they are. So we have a variety of folks on from clinical backgrounds as well as educational backgrounds. And I was kind of hoping that they would chime in a little here. So encouraging you all to give questions or comments, if you will, because I'm by no means an expert in this space, although we've had some recent conversations around it. But I am, curious. I mean, I've heard some speculation around some of what might be the issue for and I'm gonna just call it neurodivergence, because that's a whole umbrella of stuff, which includes ADHD and ADD and um, uh, what am I trying to say? Autism, and it's a whole host, whole host of things, right? And so I've
Yeah.
heard of, diet being a contributing factor, toxicity, as you mentioned, being a contributing factor. I've even heard people talk about vaccines being a contributing factor in terms of taking several vaccines simultaneously or all, at the same time, that there is some speculation around that contributing
Yeah.
to a spike in autism
Exactly.
amongst small children. So I, yes, I mean, I think perhaps there should be some checklist of sorts. You talked about a breakdown of the symptoms of ADHD, and some of these things that can mimic what would be considered maybe ADHD behavior. But if you do a closer look at the blood sugar levels, at the toxicity, and at the nutritional deficiencies or even the vaccines, you may find that may be one of these things. That's what I'm hearing based on what you're saying.
And remember, when we were looking at that chart and we said that we had a significant increase around the year 2008, 2009. Does anyone here know what happened in 2008, 2009 that might be something we want to consider? Anyone can think of what happened around that time?
So 2008, 2009, at least in my world, it was the housing bubble burst.
That's true. For us grown folks.
So yeah, I was in the housing industry, and lots of foreclosures and all
Yeah,
sorts of things because of the economic downturn. Yes.
really, really significant happened then. That
Mm-hmm.
think about what we're able to do right now in this very moment that we weren't able to do in 2008, 2009.
You mean like the technology?
Technology.
Mm.
2008, 2009 is the time when we introduced the smartphone. And that
Mm.
was when we started to see that significant boost
Got
in the internet. And children, practically everybody and their mama was giving the kids the smartphone.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that the science is in, there's no debate about this, that has shortened our attention spans to the point where it's like everything is like click, 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 click. It's that dopamine rush. Everything is like, I gotta have it now. Boop, 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 boop.
Yeah.
And they intentionally designed it that way with the Facebook, Twitter, all of those things, that whole clicking notion of liking stuff and getting that hit of dopamine. And one of the key things that we know is a factor in quote unquote ADD, ADHD is the dopamine centers of the brain. And so we make fun of it now, right? We say, oh, we live in a microwave society. Even when for us that are content creators, you know this, Nicole, you can't do long content anymore. People like, oh, you got to do like a 10-minute something or a 15-minute something because people don't want to stay on for like 60 minutes or whatever. The attention span has shrunk to this much, in large part because of our interaction with these phones. And then to make it even worse, our children are not getting something as simple as sleep. When is the last time that you've actually monitored how much sleep your teenager gets or your child gets? It was at the point when I was raising my kids, and around 2008, 2009, mine started to go into the teenage years. I cut the internet off at
Mm,
9 o'clock every night. Michelle Gamble turned off the internet,
gotcha.
and they were required to go to bed. The lights went
Mm-hmm.
out. There were no ifs, ands, buts, or in betweens.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't have but a flip phone. So it's not like they were going to be doing anything. They're like, no, mom, I want a smart. I don't care. All I
Yeah,
need is a flip phone that I know you can call me, and that's it. You don't
right.
need all this fancy stuff.
Gotcha.
Because I realized that what they were doing was staying up at night on the daggone phone. And
Indeed.
how do you think it affects a child's ability to learn, to process, to have attention if they're constantly sleep deprived, which is the
Yes.
majority of our children at this point in time?
Yes. All right. So let me pause. We are about a little more than halfway into our conversation. I do want to mention we do have a sponsor for tonight's show, and that is Miss Gloria Darling, who's doing her Talapalooza talent show and competition in Tallahassee at the American Legion on March 16th from 12:30 to 4:30. It's a talent show and competition. The entire community is invited to come out. I will be one of the judges of this talent competition. And so you can go to talapalooza.com for more information. And I will be posting that on my social media platforms. But for those of you who are just joining us, I am on with Dr. Michelle Gamble. We're talking about ADHD, a blessing, not a curse. We have talked about we have talked about breaking down the symptoms of ADHD, which is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and as well as just some of the things that may mimic what some of the ADHD symptoms are. And so we have a few comments, and a few folks have joined us. Miss Susan in Virginia, appreciate you being here, and Enigma Sep, who is in Tallahassee as well. So Miss Jeanette said some drugs used may cause the neurological system to be a disruption. The water in some states causes brains to malfunction. So that's another contributing factor.
I
Whew.
love you guys. You guys are on it. You got Brittany that was talking about her experience. And
Yes.
yeah, we have gotten into all of the side effects that these medications cause.
Mhm.
Back in 2018, I believe, we had done a summit that was entitled the Heal Your Child Summit. And one of the inspirations was for it was a woman whose son was on Adderall,
Mm.
and she had tried to not have him on Adderall. But the
Mhm.
school system had placed her in a position where they said what he would not be able to attend school if he did not take the drug. Now, the thing to keep in mind is that she kept telling the doctor, look, my child has a previous heart condition.
Mm.
They said, no problem. He needs to take this medication. Her son dropped dead
Oh wow.
on the basketball court at the age of 16.
Mm. Very sad.
I want us to really take this into consideration, that the drugs that are being used on our children are drugs that make them ill, Ill, ineligible to serve in the military. If you are on these drugs, they're a class of drugs that are considered to be of the potency that they mess with your minds and make you ineligible to be in certain jobs. So that's to tell you that this is not something to play with. The
Mm-hmm.
consequences of being on these medications is that they alter the functioning of the brain. And what I'm suggesting to you is that we consider a different paradigm, and consider that when we see certain symptoms that are exhibiting themselves in our children, that we look at it and say, what is the trigger? How can I support the natural divine design of our Creator? Our Creator has made our children beautifully. Okay. And so when something looks wonky, we need to ask ourselves, why? So before you start thinking about the 50 million drugs that they want to pump into your child and make money off of, and the diagnoses that the school system would love to have on your child so that they can collect money off of your child, I would love for you to consider, have I ruled out all the other possibilities of how I can support my child? Have I looked at how much sleep is my child getting? Have I looked at how much time is my child spending on those quote unquote smartphones?
Right.
Have I looked at how much physical activity does my child engage with? You know,
Mm-hmm.
do they go out on the basketball court? Do they go jogging, running, go breathing some fresh air? Or are they constantly sitting in front of the TV or the screen or some game that is firing off the neurotransmitters in the brain, firing off the dopamine centers, getting them
Mm.
to the point where they're just like and literally firing up the brain. Okay. Does my child have the nutrients in their food that creates geniuses, that creates people that are mentally stable? Mickey D's is not going to create an Einstein. I'm sorry to,
What?
I know who would have thunk, right?
Would have thought.
Who
All
would
right,
have thunk?
I want to bring up Brittany's comment. She said I was prescribed meds for years and never taken them. Last
Mhm,
year I decided to give them a try and it was the worst. I had
mhm.
involuntary muscle movement, was outside my body mentally and spiritually. It was a battle that took me to having to put God first and worshiping Him. I had to pray
Amen.
my way out. The condition is still here, but it's fully under my control with the Lord's help. Thank you for
Amen.
sharing that, Brittany.
Thank you for
Because
sharing that.
yeah, for sure. Because I think that is also another component sometimes we overlook is that whole spiritual wellness
It
and
is
how
very,
that impacts the other aspects of our wellness.
and to go into what Brittany is sharing with us, that spiritual component is the component that I tell all of my clients that you need to go to first.
Mm,
That spirit, I'm telling you, I've had some of my children who were diagnosed with bipolar, diagnosed with schizophrenia. Oh, I can go into some serious journeys with you with regards to mental illness. My
mm,
children were diagnosed with ADD, ADHD, and the whole alphabet soup, where they were telling me all kinds of things about my children. And the first thing I did was to go to God and say, what do I need to do?
mm.
And see, this is the road less traveled. It's easy to pop a pill. Trust
Yep.
me. And I was tempted as a parent because, especially like I said, I had 5 children, plus I was teaching in the classroom. It would have been so much easier for me to give my kids some pills and just have them just go chill and chill out, you know.
Mhm.
But when you go to God in prayer, and correct me if I'm wrong, whenever you go to God to prayer, it's like, okay, it's going to be some stuff that you got to do. And it's not going to be the easiest thing in the world. But I
Mhm.
guarantee you the side effects of going the path that God lays out for you is that so many other things fall into place. And see, that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about helping people to see what's happening, because if you do not deal with the root causes of what is triggering these symptoms, you're going to end up in a worse place. Yes, you may be able to squash that particular symptom, but the underlying imbalance, if it is not addressed, will create significant other complications later on down the line.
Mm.
You go
So
to God in prayer,
go ahead.
even the act of prayer is a way of allowing God to help you to calm things down, allowing God to help you to become focused and centered. We used to do that a lot more. We used to have quiet time where you're just allowing the world to be gone and to go inward.
Mm,
Our children are not doing that. They're not going through the the process of going inward, of calming themselves. And so they're not being taught that. That is like another muscle in your life. Prayer is a muscle, really, a
Mhm.
spiritual muscle that you've got to work, and that we need to teach our children from yay high, or should I say yay big, as soon as they're out the womb, even when
Mm.
they're in the womb, teaching them prayer, teaching them to go within, to go to God in silence, to allow the world to fall to the side. And that is the process of training the mind to be quiet. Meditation is a process of training the mind to be quiet, training the mind to be focused, training the mind to breathe slowly, to expand. It's a process. If
Okay.
you don't teach your child that process, they're not going to know it.
It is definitely a learned behavior. So Miss Brittany, she said my daughter was Baker Act at the age of 4. So all the things the Lord allowed me to go through prepared me for the fight. She is not on medication and is functioning well. God shows out every time. Thank you for
Mhm.
sharing that, Brittany. We got Dr. Tiffany Packer on. She says, so what about prayer and medication?
So, what I will say about medication is that should be the last resort after you have tried everything else. But the reality is that when they quote unquote give a child a diagnosis of ADD, ADHD, I can guarantee you that 99 times out of 100, if not more, they have not done any kind of testing. They have not tested the hormones for this child. They have not tested the glucose regulation in this child. They have not tested this child for toxicity. They have not tested the child's microbiome, because we know now that the microbiome, meaning the terrain, the environment in your gut, that is where you produce the neurotransmitters, such as dopamine, that is implicated a lot of times in children who have ADD, ADHD. They have not gone into counseling the family with regards to making sure that your child is getting enough sleep. They have not looked into the nutritional um, components of a child. There are tests that you can do to check on the nutritional levels for children, especially with regards to your B vitamins, your magnesium, and your precursors for the neurotransmitters in the brain. They definitely, more than likely, have not done what's called a SPECT scan to see exactly what is happening in the brain. So I'm of the ilk that yes, medication is necessary sometimes, but we need to test. I do not believe in anyone being given any kind of medication without doing some kind of objective tests, not some checklist that is subjective. Because I'm telling you, when I was a teacher in the classroom, I refused to do those checklists. I would have countless little children coming to me with their little checklists from their psychiatrist or psychologist or the guidance counsel, whatever. And I said, you know what? I am not filling out that checklist, because I know exactly where this is going. This is going to the point where you want to be able to justify putting this child on a mind altering drug without doing any kind of objective test. Because the reality is that the way that I will fill out a checklist is going to be different from the way Nicole fills out a checklist. It's going to be different from the way Mr. Bob fills out a checklist. I was always given the classroom with the most excitable children. Let's just put them that way. And that was just the way it is. And
Yeah.
Johnny would act a certain way, Michael act a certain way. I'm like, look, dude, that's not how we do it in this here classroom. And that's just how it is. I'd have kids coming up, oh, Dr. Gamble, I just got diagnosed with ADD, ADHD. I'm like, and your point? There were certain things that they knew I was not going to put up with. But they go down the hallway to Miss Susie's classroom and they act buck wild crazy.
So,
Okay.
so,
So
so go ahead, finish your thought. Let me pause. After you do, I got something to do.
that's why I'm saying subjective tests are not sufficient for putting a child on medication. It would be like me going to the doctor and saying, doc, I'm having some ups and downs. And if he's an irresponsible doctor, he may say, well, you know what, Michelle, I think you're diabetic. Let me give you some insulin. Oh, hell no, you ain't giving me some damn insulin until you give me a daggone blood test to validate and justify a medication that's going to alter my blood glucose levels.
Okay. And I'm gonna come back to this, but again, a few more folks have joined us, and there's some comments that I want to address. So my mom is on. Hey, mom, thank you, love you, and also Sharice Du Bois in Atlanta. Thank you for being here. So we got, let's see. Felicia, she said it's important to note that healing is not linear or one dimensional. Prayer is always the first choice. However, a child that has suffered losses and has taken medication is not an awful thing. Agreed. It is not an awful thing. Um, Dr. Gamble is just, arguing that or presenting that the medication should be the choice of last resort. Rennie says, hold on, I missed the first part. She said, I observed that special diets have proven effective for some students, particularly when parents are highly involved in ensuring the proper diet is followed. However, for other students, consistency with specified diets may not always be achievable, and medications have been beneficial. In the case of my daughter, who was diagnosed with ADHD, simple accommodations have worked well for her despite medications being suggested for addressing other symptoms. Personally, I believe that some of these additional symptoms may be attributed to spiritual warfare, although not scientific. Thank you for sharing that, Rennie. And so, Felicia, this is such a rich conversation. As a diabetes awareness advocate, I know from experience that unmanaged diabetes wreaks havoc on the hormones and disrupts every system's function in the body. Thank you for sharing that, Felicia. Okay. Alethea has joined us. That's all right. We're glad you're here. And LP, thank you for joining us. All right, Cherie, she said, when my son was diagnosed with ADHD in the first grade, his pediatrician recommended to the school to provide extra assistance with assignments opposed to medication. Nice. It's glad to, I'm glad to hear some some alternatives
Yeah.
that are being. So, Cherise, I'd be curious if you don't mind sharing. Um, was that effective, or how did that turn out for your son? Let us know, if you will, in the comments. And folks are texting me too, so let me see.
So, to go into, you know, again, one of the reasons why I say that we need to be cautious with medications is because medications are not addressing the underlying issues. They can get rid of symptoms. You can take that medication, and yes, your child will calm down. Absolutely, positively. However, keep in mind, every medication has a whole series of side effects.
Indeed.
Secondly, every medication causes nutritional deficiencies. And thirdly, every medication is simply a mask for an imbalance that has not been healed. So the danger is that if the imbalance that is causing your child's hyperactivity is one of a hormonal imbalance, wouldn't you rather help your child to bring balance to his or her hormonal system now as a child than to wait for it to evolve into something even more dastardly as an adult?
Mm-hmm.
If your child's hyperactivity is due to nutritional deficiencies, wouldn't you rather know what those nutritional deficiencies are so that you have the option of choosing to prevent those deficiencies by giving your child whatever supplements or foods or whatever it is that will address that deficiency and alleviate that situation and help your child to truly heal? If the hyperactivity is due to blood glucose dysregulation, wouldn't you rather know now than have it evolve to the point of diabetes as your child gets older. And keep in mind that the fastest growing group of diabetics in this country is children.
Mm.
Children. And the symptoms that we're talking about are the beautiful red flags that God has sent. That's why I said it's a blessing, not a curse. It's like, thank God I'm aware that there's something that is not right for my child. Thank God I'm aware that my child is not getting enough sleep. I really need to make sure my child gets more sleep. Thank God. This is a red flag that makes me think maybe my child shouldn't be on that phone so daggone much.
So I'm gonna pause you there. We do have some more comments as well. Like I said, people are texting me too. And so you mentioned test, and so I wrote them down. I'm taking notes. Okay, I got my notebook here. So you mentioned hormone. You mentioned glucose, toxicity, microbiome. I probably got that one wrong, but
Mm-hmm.
yes, okay. And I put sleep test, nutritional test, and spec scan. My
Mm-hmm.
question, that's seven tests, potential tests. That's what I'm calling them. Um, how many of those are covered by insurance?
Well, let's look at certain things. You know, sleep. That's a matter of you just knowing how much sleep your child is getting. That doesn't cost anything. And of
Okay.
course, that has nothing to do with insurance. When it comes to things like blood glucose, most of us know somebody, somewhere, somehow that is diabetic. And if need be, you can borrow that person's meter, get the proper the pricks, they're individual, and you can check your child's blood glucose. I know
Okay.
when we did the Teen Leadership Summit in Brunswick, Georgia, a couple of years ago, that's what we did. I had a lot of different meters that people had donated to It Takes a Village, and we tested all of the children. And we had about 15 children there, and two of them had blood glucose levels that were through the roof. Those were the
Okay.
kids that I said, make sure your mama takes you to the doctor. You need to get this checked. You need to catch this now. Now is better than later. In terms of other tests, it depends on what type of doctor you have.
Mm,
Some doctors will do what's needed and write it up so that you can get your insurance company to cover it. And then there are other tests that they don't cover by insurance. Like my son, when he became schizophrenic, I had him do the SPEC scan, and that scan was thousands of dollars, but it was worth every penny of it because at this point in time, thanks to God and thanks to the information that I got from that SPEC scan, my son has graduated with a license in aviation mechanics. And how
mm.
often do you hear that about a schizophrenic person without a single iota of medication? To God be the glory. And thank you for giving me that wisdom to help my son. So it was worth every penny. Did I have to finance it? Yes, I had to finance it. I had to, fill out the little finance papers, and it took me 2 years to pay for that daggone test. But that's what I knew I wanted to do for my son. And so what I'm suggesting to you, like I said, is the road less traveled. Is it going to require sacrifice? Yeah. So there's certain things that you can do. You can do like an elimination diet to be able to determine which foods are triggering your child's symptoms. Does it
Mm.
take time? Does it take energy? Yes. Does it take time and energy for you to decide to entertain your child and maybe read a child to your book and do prayers with your child as opposed to saying, hey, here's a smartphone, or here, geek out on Hulu for 10 hours and don't sleep? That's parenting is all about sacrifice. That's all I'm going to say.
It is. I mean, you definitely have got a point there. Let me acknowledge a few folks. Ishmael Rentz is in Gainesville. He's on with us. And Jiva St. Fort, Dr. Jiva St. Fort, who's in Tallahassee. She said, I'd like for you to lean in on the misdiagnosis of children for financial gain.
Yeah,
I am a
yeah,
professor. Some of my students confidently mention their anxiety and ADHD preventing them from performing.
exactly.
So,
And one of the dangers of misdiagnosing that
mm,
unfortunately, people don't realize one of the reasons why these schools are pushing our parents to have them labeled as ADD, ADHD, and all the different alphabet soup is because that's when the school gets money. The school gets extra money for each child that has this diagnosis, and that's just the reality of things.
Okay.
And then the doctors will get kickbacks from the drug companies whenever they put a child on different medications. So and it goes all the way up the food chain. At the
Indeed.
end of the day, follow the money.
Follow. Yeah, somebody else text me that it is all a business. It's all a
Yes,
business.
major
Brother,
businesses.
major business. Brother Quasi has joined us.
Different therapists, and whenever you have a child that's in quote unquote special ed or has an IEP and all of that stuff, that's money. Every single thing is money.
Mm,
There's major money in this particular business.
yeah.
And the unfortunate thing about it is that it creates a situation where if you are constantly taking these medications, it will over time alter what was previously probably a healthy brain.
Mm,
And then you become addicted to it in the sense that you cannot function other than utilizing it because it has created a situation where now you are dependent on taking that medication for the rest of your life.
mm,
And weaning off of these meds is challenging because not only are you going to have to try and rebalance the brain's neurochemistry, but you're also going to have to deal with what was the underlying cause to begin with, which more than likely became even more exacerbated over time because it wasn't addressed.
wow. All right. Let me I got comments flying in on the phone on the live. So let me try to manage this. And we are at an hour. So if y'all could just hang in there with us for a few minutes. I really do try to respect people's time, but it's the conversation has picked up a bit. So Cherise had originally talked about her son being diagnosed with ADHD, and she did respond. The pediatrician recommended the school provide extra assistance with assignments as opposed to medication. And she said that it turned out great for them. They had a support team in Broward County Schools. Her son had an IMP until he graduated. He was involved in media ministry at the church, ran track, and was in the band in high school. He did attend college at SCAD, but it was challenging when getting Broward to send the IEP to the school for him to continue with the academic assistance. Wow, thank you for sharing that, Cherise. We also have Miss Tiffany Thompson, who's an
So
educator.
important,
Uh-huh.
Nicole. It's so important that people like Sharice, that you stay on these schools and advocate for your child with the IEP. Because remember the example that I gave with Michael. Basically, I was creating an IEP for him. I
Mm,
realized that he needed something different. Sometimes the kids need what's called a stand-up desk because they need to be able to kick their legs or move some part of their body so that their minds can focus. So parents, advocate for your children. You do not have to put your kids on drugs, but you may need to get the support of the entire school community to create an environment that is conducive to this child's way of learning. A lot of children do not learn by just sitting in front of a teacher. They need to be active, they need to move.
right, Tiffany. As an educator, I believe these services are provided by the school. Listen. I want to. I would love to see or hear about the school providing any of these tests that we just talked about, because I
Wow.
really believe that it's expensive if those tests are not granted by the insurance companies. Then just as you did, Dr. Michelle, you finance the scan for your son, which took some time. So that there's that. We have an educator on my phone who says, as a teacher, she disagrees with the ADHD testing before first grade because of the transition from play-based learning. And it's now a requirement for children to have ADHD to qualify for schools for
Wow.
pre-K in this particular school
Oh,
district. So
scary. But
Yeah,
Nicole, a blood test is not that expensive. A blood test will run you maybe $150, $200 to get a comprehensive blood test that's going to give you not only the blood glucose markers, but also markers pertaining to the adrenal in terms of their stress response, markers pertaining to certain key minerals like magnesium, potassium, calcium,
mhm,
things of that nature. So we're not talking about like what I had to do. My experience with my son was extreme because he was schizophrenic. He was out of his mind, wandering the streets practically half naked. So that's why I had to go to the extreme of getting that particular test. But
gotcha.
most of our children do not require that test. Most of
Mm,
them can get by with a simple blood test that will give you a lot of information, and to have someone sit down with you and look at the symptomology, like I said, checking off what are you feeding your child?
yeah, yeah,
Something like corn could be a trigger. Gluten
right,
can be a trigger.
right. All right, so we got Mr. Gary Russ on with us. Thank you for being here, Brother Gary. He said, "Good evening. As an active member of the education sector, I believe that having comprehensive systems of behavior support is essential for enhancing the experience of students that may have ADHD. Misdiagnosed students usually have problems long term because of that failure to address the underlying issues." Agreed. All right. We got Pastor Otis Young on, who is also an educator here, well, in Tallahassee. And Jiva St. Ford, Dr. Jiva, she said, continue. Does the diagnosis itself give students permission to not meet their optimal academic performance?
Mhm.
Is there a connection with the misdiagnosis in children of color?
I believe there is.
Okay.
I
All
believe
right.
that it's more prevalent in our community. Um, it just is because of misdiagnosis, because our children learn differently. There's research that shows about the way in which our brains are wired differently. We have more of that interconnection with the right side of the brain, more of that creativity. So again, like when I was teaching math, I had to do different things. We would learn through song, we would learn through physical motion, things of that nature. All of these things help to solidify the reality that children learn in different ways. And it's very hard to do in our current educational system where you may have 25 to 30 kids in a classroom and they're on all different grade levels. They have different learning styles. It is tough,
Yeah,
tough, tough, tough being a teacher today.
indeed. All right. So I'm gonna make this our last comment, and then I'm gonna allow you to give us closing remarks and tell folks how they can connect with you. So, Alethea, she said college students with any learning challenges should register with the institution's student disability services and submit the appropriate required documentation. And she said the institution should make the appropriate accommodations based on the student's needs. I never even heard of that. But thank you for sharing that, Alethea. Appreciate that. All right, this is the last comment. Camille Lewis. Hey, Camille, thank you for joining us. She said, "Do you have any resources, articles about how Black children's brain are wired differently?"
Yes, you have look up Jawanza Kunjufu. He wrote a lot of
Mhm.
different books on Black children. And also, oh gosh, there was a Black couple in Tallahassee that had the school. You probably remember them,
The Denard?
Nicole. Yeah, the
Dang,
Denards.
yeah,
Yeah,
Dr.
Professor Denard can definitely assist you. We actually have an interview with Professor Denard on our YouTube channel, but they are phenomenal resources that can give you a lot more of the resources pertaining to that. And one of the last things I would like to share with everyone is that your child does not have to live with that symptomology. Your child can heal, okay? Your child can get the resources to support their biology. You can balance your blood sugar. You can stabilize your hormonal system. You can meet the needs of the nutritional deficiencies. You can balance the neurotransmitters. the production of the neurotransmitters. This can be a blessing to you and your child, because as you're doing that for your child, you'll probably realize that you've got some health issues that benefit from improving your child. When you tell your child to go to sleep, when I had to turn off the internet for my kids, guess what? I got more sleep. My body got better. When I had to make sure I changed the way we ate, my health got better, just as my children's health got better. So that
Yeah.
is the last message I want to leave you guys with. God has designed you and your child beautifully, beautifully. Always ask yourself the question, why? Why is my child experiencing these symptoms? And God, help me to understand what I need to do, what I need to shift in my life to help my child to heal and to be able to express his or her best potential.
Love it. And how can folks connect with you?
You can connect me. We have our website, theholistichealingdoctor.com. You can connect with me also with my email, sankofahe@gmail.com. You can call me 850-725-8322. You can text me. That's probably even better because a lot of times I don't answer the phone. And you can sometimes see me in person when I go and I do different workshops. If you would like for me to come and do a workshop, would love to do that. We're going to be in Atlanta area. We're going to be at the health fair at AME Church on March 16th. It's a Saturday, this Saturday coming up. So we're going to be at that health fair at Mount Zion AME Church in Atlanta. And you can check us out on our YouTube channels. So, hey, would love to hear from you.
All right. Wonderful. Um, so I hope you all have benefited from this conversation. If you have, just let us know in the comments. Those of you who are watching the replay, also just let us know what your thoughts are, and if this resonated with you. Definitely, again, I took lots of notes. I am prepared to challenge some of the school of thought around some of these tests and some of these activities. So it definitely is a mindset shift on this Mindset Monday, right? All right. And I want
And
to
water, drink more water.
more water. Listen, non-contaminated water. Okay. We need that good water.
Non-contaminated water, filtered water. Get
Yes.
a filter for your home.
Get a
Absolutely.
filter. Get a filter. Get a filter. Thank you, Dr. Gamble, for being my guest and for raising this conversation around this diagnosis, the alphabet soup, as you call it, of ADHD and ADD and all of the D's. We need to be aware of these things and, just take a closer look and examine, maybe there's some things that we can do that will mitigate some of this stuff, and you know we not even have to have the diagnosis at all. So that's essentially what we're talking about. For those of you who are new to the platform, I invite you to subscribe to the Conversations with Nicole YouTube channel. We're here Mondays and Wednesdays at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, focus on mental health and wellness in Black and Brown communities, specifically encouraging us to get our checkup from the neck up and just be our best selves. And so, Mindset Monday, Wellness Wednesday. On Wednesday, we'll have Dr. Kirk, who is a psychologist out of Atlanta, and our topic is Heal Black Man Heal. So, y'all definitely want to tune in for that. I see a few more folks have commented. Dr. Harrison has joined us. She said that is how I completed my PhD. I am a product of disability services throughout all of my degrees. So grateful for the support. Amen. Thank you, Dr. Harrison, for sharing. Brittany said, thank you. Tracy said, informative and encouraging. Thank you so much, all of you all, for commenting. Alethea is talking to Dr. Harrison. Alethea said, great conversation. Thank you so much, Alethea. Appreciate you tuning in. Appreciate all of y'all for your interaction tonight. Let's keep this
Yeah.
conversation going, because we definitely need to be mindful of these diagnoses, the medication, all of that sort of thing. So if there are some things that we can do and make the medication the last resort, let's do that. Let's do that. All right. Once again, my apologies for our extended conversation, but I think it had to be done because we needed to get all of this out. Again, thank you, Dr. Gamble, and we will see y'all next time. Have a good night. Peace.